All right, so now it's recorded. Okay, it's all yours.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Surya, and I work for Groupon, and I think today we are discussing dotCI, which is like the plugin we developed in house, and then we open sourced it. So I was not sure what how usually the Hangouts go. Is it like mostly technical discussion, or?
Yes, I think everyone here is people who have hacked on Jenkins. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll start with the motivation for writing this plugin. So we were using GitHub Enterprise, and we actually switched from like one big Rails application to like a service-oriented architecture. And the problem we ran into with Jenkins is people had to like set up two different jobs basically, for one for the master branch, which is like the branch everyone watches, and like everything else branch. So there would be like two bills for every project. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar thing to why I had the motivation for the multi-branch literate stuff.
Yeah.
But we'll let you go ahead.
Right. So yeah, I've looked at the Literate plugin, and yeah, it's the same idea. So people were like, they were setting up two jobs, sometimes like even more. And one other thing we ran into was for some reason, after a certain number of bills, we run like around 3,000 bills per day. And for some reason, Jenkins would like take forever to start. I don't know if that's something on my end, like configuration-wise, or it seems to be like loading all the bills that were ever created at startup, and that was causing like a lot of performance issues.
Yeah, we used to do that in earlier versions.
Okay, so that might be from the earlier version. So that was one of the motivations for using MongoDB as a backend, to like not load bills on demand, as opposed to like load them up front. Another thing was it was really hard to query bills by SHAs. For example, like I work on release engineering team, so our job is to like take code and put it into production. Like so it was like really hard to figure out which bill belonged to which SHA. I guess you can do it with like through the API, like go like inspect git data and all. But it was not very straightforward. Also, one of the requirements we had was we couldn't like aggressively prune the bills. We had to keep the bills for a certain amount of time because of SOX restrictions. So I think that's how we negotiated SOX. SOX is like a security thing for enterprises, but so yeah, at a high level, there were like multiple minor issues.
Right.
So I thought, let's just try writing a plugin, maybe like to solve all these.
So one of the things I noticed, I don't know if you want me to interrupt in the middle or not. But,
yeah, go ahead and interrupt me. Yeah.
So one of the things I noticed in the middle was that so you created this job type that loads from Mongo. Loads from Mongo, and because I think partly because the core doesn't really offer any hooks to let you do that, you implemented this as a subtype of, well, basically your own job type, right?
Yes.
Is this, and then I think there's a lot of interest in sort of being able to store the job config in outside the file system like you did here. So I was wondering if, like, what are there any ways to turn this into this extension point so that the existing job type could benefit from this?
Right. So I think, yeah, I'm not sure if this can be turned into an extension point, but I guess one idea I had, like initially, was so this is an example of a method. I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm on like a job in Jenkins, and like onload. This is the method which loads jobs from the, builds from the file system. So one idea I initially had was to like abstract this out into like some like data provider as an extension point, like extract like all the persistence into like a separate extension point, and Jenkins can like use this by default, and if someone adds a new one, there would be like a new radio button in config. I don't know if that makes sense.
Radio button config for...
So this would be a file, like by default it would be a file-based persistence, but if someone wanted to write like a MongoDB persistence.
Right, yes. So I think what you're suggesting is that, like, as an extension point, using a virtual file system as the actual data store for the job configuration. And that way, if there's a second virtual file system that actually is DB backed, then it would go to the DB rather than going to the file system.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much. Yeah. That's what
I think where like from my perspective, the experience I had with Literate was with regards to how we go about putting the job configuration into source control. And what I ended up with Literate doing is I can kind of cheat, because basically before I build the job, I've already gone and queried source control. And so I already know what the job configuration is before I even check out, which means that checking out, I can actually manipulate via the job configuration if I need to. And that kind of has an advantage, but you need to be going kind of wholly in the multi-branch mode to actually take advantage of it. And it's not really something that's easy to do for regular jobs, but it's not impossible. It just means that there's certain things you can't do. So you can't put in build wrappers with regular jobs, because you'll need to have checked out from source control so you can figure out what build wrappers need to be added in, and already that's too late for the checkout. So there are limits in terms of how much job configuration you can pull that way. And at least with your DB back thing, maybe you have the mechanism to pull it from source control up front before you actually do the checkout, or do you only configure the job after you've got the checkout? That's kind of where I'm wondering.
So I think in dotCI the checkout doesn't happen through Jenkins. It happens on command line. I don't know if that makes sense. Are we talking about git checkout? Or?
Yeah, we are talking about git checkout. So you bypass entirely the SCM abstraction at the moment in dotCI.
Yeah, it all happens on command line.
Yeah, okay. If we were integrating it with Literate, which is one thing I'd like to do, and by the way, I think I'm veering towards renaming Literate to Documented or something like that, because part of the idea I have is that there is a machine-readable file that describes how to build, and that's what Literate is about. Now, unfortunately, Literate is overloaded for the usage of the term Literate, because it also includes this concept of having a build file where you can stick comments in and all this sort of stuff. And that's not the only thing I had envisaged with the Literate plugin. I had envisaged things like a YAML-based description of the job type. And so your Groovy-based YAML format, to me, would be just another format that needs parsing, and would produce a similar model of how to actually build. And so in that respect, the dotCI stuff is interesting from my perspective in that regard as another format. And what I'm then interested in understanding is all the other stuff you had to do, is a lot of that gone with the multi-branch, and then the bit that I'm interested in as well is in terms of storing the build records in the database, because that's something that maybe might make sense to do with the multi-branch as well.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I guess my question was a bit simpler in that, I mean, if I read your code correctly, your basic approach is, okay, so let's, you're not gonna touch the XML, so you just capture the whole XML as a string, put that into MongoDB, and when you load them, like you query those from MongoDB, and then you use that the rest is just a standard Jenkins deserialization process.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then I studied, so as I was reading this, then I realized, okay, this actually seems to, in theory, it should work with, say, Freestyle project. I don't really see anything in this process that ties it, so long as, like, if you could just intercept the call into the file persistence.
That should work. Yeah, that should work out of box with.
Right. So instead of, I wasn't thinking something sophisticated like a VFS, but actually just like if you could just intercept the code to config XML into, and then like put that back into some backend. In this case, MongoDB.
Right. That should work in theory.
So
I actually initially I tried to like serialize it into like a pure JSON, but I had some trouble with actions and the way they were cased, I think, with like some plugin, with check style plugin or something. So I was like, let's not shake the boat too much. And
right. Are there any gotchas that you found when you try to? So yeah, how about this next build number? Are you actually persisting that into the disk? I don't remember seeing that.
I'm not. That's one of the things on the backlog. It's just using what Jenkins does. Okay. So it's on disk as of now.
Okay.
Yeah. It can be it can be from the database, but yeah.
Okay. So maybe actually to properly abstract those props, it's starting to become a bit more like VFS. Although Jesse, I noticed that in the note Jesse said I don't think he thinks it's the right abstraction.
Well, from my perspective, I think a VFS, while it's attempting abstraction, you're effectively trading a nice local file system for potentially a remote network call. So depending on the relative timings, that could actually end up slowing down the loading.
1, 2.
Okay.
If you're talking about build history, I think you need something that leaves more flexibility for the implementation than the VFS mode.
Oh. So how do you persist the build history into Mongo? Is it just build.xml?
Yeah, it's just build.xml.
Okay. And then I guess right.
It's just standard build.xml. I do persist, like I do deserialize some of the fields. Let me show it to you. So I do deserialize some of the fields like branch name, build number, so I can query it without actually looking into the XML. So it's kind of.
Okay.
So, for example, this is an example, the last build.
So that's what makes things fast.
Right. So you can like look up by SHA. Let me find where it is. So if someone, like, for example, if someone requested a build by SHA, I would just do a Mongo query based on. So when the build.xml is saved, I deserialize SHA into a separate field so it can be queried later.
Okay.
So what gets deserialized out of build XML is a little bit ad hoc now. It would have been ideal if we could like just deserialize into JSON.
Right. I wonder if you
I
can.
wonder, KK, if the thing to do for Jenkins generally is to start looking at putting in place indexes rather than having to load every record. The indexes can be lazily verified. So if you know there's an answer in build 57, you then go look for build record 57 and deserialize for verification. But rather than having to go digging all the way through the 15 builds.
Yeah, which is kind of, we already actually have that index called symlinks, but I think we are just not using it. So yes.
But the problem with symlinks is symlinks kind of forces you to presuppose what they are. Whereas at least with Mongo, if you can put in more fields, you're not littering more symlinks all over the place. Symlinks are good for certain things, but for certain jumping around and navigation, you actually want the ability to have a more complex index.
Yeah. Okay, so I see. So turning this would be, or perhaps partly related, but not completely the same. Is like this part of storing this dynamic project and dynamic build class. I think this is kind of interesting, and I wonder if you thought about pulling them off into separate plugins, or they have like hairy dependencies between the rest of your stuff.
No, I don't think there is any dependencies. I can't think of any like. I think it can be pulled out. I would work on separating it out into a new plugin if that makes sense.
I think it'd be great. I think it would allow other people to get inspired.
Yeah, I guess the downside is that people have to like create a new job type as opposed to like just using it as a plugin.
Yeah. So I want to still see if you could turn this into some kind of extension point in the core, orthogonal to job types, but not immediately obvious to me how to go about doing that, especially given that the part of this is actually having the project querying using the DB index to find something which to fit that correctly into the current model is
Right. I guess the current model can like still go through the builds and do what it's doing, but
okay. No, but that's good. And then I can move on to another topic here. Yeah, another area that at least to me was very interesting was you came up with this, a syntax for defining how to run the build, the .ci.yml file.
Yeah.
I understand that this is all pluggable and stuff like that. And then so and then I know the Literate plugin also attempts something similar, which is to define the job configuration in the disk. I mean, in the SCM. And so, are there ways to like maybe take yeah, have that portion extracted so that we only have like one way of specifying build instructions across different plugins. It didn't make sense to me that we have like a half a dozen different ways to describe build inside SCM.
Yeah, I think it can be done. The main
Actually, where is that logic? Where are these? Was that in a different repo?
no, it's all in the same repo. It's under build configuration.
Build configuration. Oh, there it is.
Dynamic build configuration. And how it basically works is it follows like an inheritance model. So this is like the base YAML that all the other YAMLs inherit.
Mm-hmm.
So it does like the basic checkout, for example, here. So all the YAMLs are they inherit from this YAML. So for example, this is the one for Ruby. So this kind of inherits from the base YAML. I don't know if that makes sense. So the idea was that even if you don't have, if you don't specify like, don't specify a YAML file to build, you should be able to like infer what's going on. Like GitHub tells you that this is a Java repository.
Right.
So I shouldn't have to like configure my build to run Maven install, because that's like that's probably like 90% of what Java builds do. So it defaults to like same defaults for each language type. So we have one for like Go language and Clojure. So these are all the languages that we use at Groupon. So we like created base YAMLs for all those. So even if people don't specify a YAML file, they can still like have a build running, have something running, you know, so they can like modify it later, but they have something running.
That's how we've done.
So maybe this is mainly a question to Stephen, but this seems like on the surface of it something usable for Literate, no?
Yeah, I guess the concept, the way I had the approach with Literate was to say that what we wanted to do was actually have people describe in a README file how to build. So actually, the fact that you were saying MVN install was, in a sense, a good thing, because that's describing how you should build, and if you see the thing, it's telling you how to build. The alternative is to actually go and say, okay, we'll infer based on this being a Java project, or based on this being a Ruby project, or whatever, what commands will be the best bet, and you override if they're different from the default. It's hard to know which is the best approach. It doesn't bother me one way or the other, but there needs to be some sort of consistency.
Daddy.
And I'm running out of time that I can actually participate at this stage.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to drop.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, maybe the same question here. Is this something that can be pulled out into a separate plugin, this build configuration part, or does that depend on some other stuff?
No.
Well, what I'm thinking is, I think if we get a .ci parser into Literate, I don't see why it can't include the defaults.
I know we don't get 10
Yes, I know. It's just a question of what that is. I think for the actual Literate style, I wouldn't be encouraging defaults.
Daddy.
Because the benefit of Literate is describing in the README how you go about building. So you actually want to have people spell it out. For something like this, which is a different format and more machine readable, I don't see it as against the principle of having same defaults.
Okay, I mean, you're not doing defaults. I think it's okay, but if you could recognize the same file in the same syntax, and then
So what I'm saying is the .ci. If we had .ci support in Literate, it could have same defaults, and that would work perfectly well, and that would be fine.
Oh, okay.
And I see nothing wrong with having same defaults for .ci. I'm just saying for the README format in Literate, or documented, or whatever we end up calling it, I don't think that will want to have same default. I think that will want to be explicit, because the benefit there is for people coming to the GitHub repository and seeing it, they see the exact instructions as to how to build, and they don't have to infer same defaults as a human.
Right. So does this .ci.yml, like a build configuration part of this plugin, does this depend on like a DB-backed project and so on, or?
No, it's completely separate. Like you can get a build configuration object. Just so all that code is like all
Okay.
in a different package. So I think it should be like a day's worth of work to like separate it out.
Yeah, I think it'd be. I really appreciate that. I think it would open up the opportunity for the use.
Right. So yeah. So I don't see why not.
Cool.
Yeah, it can be into a different plugin, I think.
And then on that space, did you? So I noticed that the all the build steps, well, all the the individual commands in this instruction is basically invoking shell. Have you thought about like an interop with build step and notifiers and publishers and so on? It seems doable because you extend from abstract project. So take so what would be a good example? Take like a parameterized build trigger plugin, which allows someone to trigger another job. So if you could, and then so you can't really write that as a shell step, but if you could sort of have some data binding so that I could specify how to use this build step. Maybe I can show you the my screenshot to make it a bit more concrete. Let's see my screen. Yeah, so so if you could instantiate eventually, if you step and then call its perform method. And then, because your DB-backed project is abstract build, I think the signature would kind of match up okay.
Okay.
And then so that would allow people to instantly reuse all the 900 Jenkins plugin that implements them. And perhaps yeah. So for you, perhaps the build step is less useful, but I think the notifiers are definitely useful. I noticed that you have defined your own notifier subtype, I think.
Yeah. So
but the actually it depends on. No, there's a post build notifier, right?
Post build notifier, yeah, I think that's right.
So this seems almost like just regular notifier. Yeah, maybe that's actually a question to you. Like, have you thought about perhaps are there reasons this is different from notifier extension point?
That's a good question. I don't know why it's different or if it can be same. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's different, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine. I thought that if you had a better interop is the existing extension points, then that wouldn't, I think you'd leverage from existing assets in the community. So I thought it'd be useful.
Right. So for plugins, what I did was so I don't know if you can see the link that I posted. So I defined a new extension point. Let me see what it's called.
I'd be happy to come on this call.
So I defined a new extension point called dotCI plugin adapter, which what it does basically is it lets you adapt an existing plugin like it reads the YAML configuration and runs it. So this is an example of a Cobertura plugin that can be used.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's like totally insane or that's how we do it here. So that's how we use the existing plugins, basically.
So this adapter, what the adapter is doing is plugin input. So you instantiate things by. But how do you actually perform? Oh, I see. So you define sub.
Yeah. So there's a perform method which basically calls the plugins.
I see. Okay. I wonder. I guess. Yeah. So all these like the build steps, they have machine readable. Their constructor arguments are all machine readable. So maybe perhaps to make this bit more concrete, on one hand you have I guess like a map of stuff, right? Like a key value pair of the configurations. And on the other hand, we have this like things like artifact archiver or a find bugs plugin or Cobertura plugin that you want to instantiate, and they have the constructor arguments all machine readable. Those are just name value pair. So it seems to me that if you could just like map them mechanically.
Oh, instead of having the adapter, yeah, that makes sense.
Instead of like coding them one by one, it seems like that would let us. So maybe that's a kind of. So let's see. So where do we do this? So this is in. So pointers are.
So in that case, we could just install the plugin and discover it at runtime.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The problem with this approach I had was the constructor is like statically. So if you upgrade the plugin, it's statically linked. So you cannot like upgrade the plugin.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I think yes, from that point of view, I guess the dynamic discovery and the mapping would also help too.
Okay. Yeah, I made a note of it. That makes sense.
Kosuke, are you talking about the databound constructor for the build steps?
Yes.
Because I mean those can become quite large, and they sort of infer that the UI has filled in some default things that the user shouldn't need to do. And if you put that in a YAML file, then you need to put like tons of stuff for a big plugin, like one of mine, for example, that sort of had 20, 30 different parameters to the constructor.
Can we just do like a reasonable JVM default values for things that's not specified? I thought they did. I hope that it did work most of the time.
I don't know. I think I use some kind of like the default tag in the jelly files. I think, and many with me are sort of asserting that the default is there, that is specified in the jelly file.
Right.
So that could be a problem with going with the databand constructor approach.
Right. Okay. So maybe. Perhaps this is something the core should do something about, more machine readable default arguments. But I think this is a recurring problem. In the job DSO plugin, I think they got the similar issue. In Workflow, I think we got a similar issue. So I think it's worse. I think it's worse.
Yeah, and I mean, and I plan to do a lot of refactoring just to be able to shorten the amount of parameters to the databand constructor as well. So that could be an issue with backwards compatibility of the constructors and all that junk.
Rather than having defaults for databand constructor, can you just have a default value for the field and then use databound setters?
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah, that could work.
Sorry, I missed the last comment. What was it again?
So the there's a in newer Jenkins, and I don't think the one you're using it have that, but in the newer Jenkins, there are, instead of injecting everything from the constructor, we could inject things from the field or the setters. So Jesse's suggestion was, well, the problem with the default value arises because the values are taken in the constructor, whereas if it's a setter, then it kind of makes it obvious. So, yeah, I think he's right.
So you're saying that in the newer Jenkins, there's a way to infer default values?
Yeah, so let me actually show it to you. So there's my ID. This guy. Yeah, so I guess the canonical one would be. Are we using this in the core? No. So they say this one. I hope you can see my screen, but you see that. So this is a currently machine readable constructor.
Oh, I don't see your screen for some reason.
Is it not visible to anyone else?
I can see it.
Yeah, you just gotta click over to it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. So so this is the one that's marked as like a machine readable data binding, and then so at the compile time we capture all these like argument names, and then make it available at the runtime. So the way what I was advocating is that, okay, so you have a map, so like if you can take these things and then figure out the value that they do. And then the Robert original point is like, if you think about the artifact archiving, like, probably all but one argument is, most of the people don't care about these 5 extra arguments. And then it'd be a pain in the backside if you have to specify all of them.
Right.
And then so we started thinking, well, maybe if none is specified, why we don't just provide in the JVM default value? And so, but eventually Jesse's point is, okay, so that just the constructor should really only take the minimum required arguments, and everything else should be coming in as, like a setter.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that. Experimenting with this data bound constructor binding as a first step, I think would be useful. And then we figure out these things over time.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. I will, yeah. So I guess one of the advantages we saw for specifying plugins in ci.yml was that people can like just fork the plugin, fork the project in GitHub, and just click a button and the project is like all set up.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people see the value.
Yeah, we see that a lot here. People fork and set up their own forks all the time.
Okay, so that's the. Yeah, so those are the main thing I wanted to ask.
Yeah, there is also like namespacing. I think it's the same as folders plugin. I think that's where I got most of the. Like the projects are namespaced according to the organization, but I think that's not very interesting.
Well, I mean, no, it is, but I think well, at least I understand how it's done. So.
Yeah, it's the same as folders plugin. I think that's where I got all the code.
Yeah. I'm just impressed that you figure so much out just on. I mean, as far as I can tell, all on your own. I wasn't.
No, actually, this is from folders plugin. It's like.
Yeah, that's. I mean, not just this, but like implementing some type of a job is a major achievement. So yeah, and not only that, like you have. So this is just amazing effort.
Oh, thank you. So I think that those are the main components. One is DB backing and ci.yml.
Actually, there's one more piece that I wanted to ask. So I think, if I remember correctly, you created a new UI to let people create jobs, because your sort of the flow of like a page navigation flow is a bit different.
Right.
You'd show all the GitHub repos, and then people would, I guess, click the button to create those and so on. And then so one of the and then so this, but this general use case of wanting to create new jobs in different flow has actually been there since Jenkins was called Hudson. And then so I wonder if there are things we can do to sort of change the way we do the new job page, so that you could still follow what you're doing in there. I don't know what have you thought about something like that? Like if you could actually change the core.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the things I ran into right off the bat was you had to specify a name of your project. Like when you create a new job, you have to specify the name. But like dotCI, you're restricted to the name of the project in GitHub. You cannot choose your own name. So yeah, I think that kind of I didn't even pursue that route like that. So I think if the UI can be changed for creating the new job to support this, yeah, that would be ideal. I don't know if other plugins need it, or if this is a special use case.
So I've heard this in a number of contexts. One is some people want to want that page to be a context sensitive. So there's this one company in the Bay Area. They created a lot of job types, and then so they want to filter things down depending on who's accessing it.
Okay.
And so that's the earliest one that I've heard of. And then in Build High, which is what we do in CloudBees, we had this similar challenge of, okay, so that's very similar flow as yours. People would see their GitHub orgs and their repos and create the new jobs from the buttons. In recipe plugin, you can basically import a set of jobs from elsewhere.
Okay.
So that's another kind of creating new jobs. So this is actually not just a special case for dotCI, but it's sort of a somewhat a general problem.
Okay. Yeah, it would be nice to have a support for custom flows for new job. Because now I have to tell our users don't click the new job button, click this.
Exactly. So what's the maybe if you introduce a tab, and then each maybe different section, different so the different tab page, you come from different extension points, and then so you implement that extension point, and in your case you could actually remove the default built-in tab implementation for the select name and select project type altogether, so you won't even see that in your instance.
Right.
So something like that could.
Something like that could work, yeah.
Okay. And aside from that, generally speaking, are there anything that we can do in the core to make your life easier?
I cannot think of anything. Yeah, I cannot think of anything. I used to have a lot of complaints, but I kind of worked around
Okay.
them one by one. So yeah, our Jenkins is super stable now because despite, yeah.
Cool.
Maybe I'll check my notes. I think I might have something, but I cannot think of anything.
Oh, that's good to hear. But yes, if you come across anything, let us know.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've made bunch of notes as to what came out of this meeting. So.
Anyone else want to ask anything? All right. If not,
Well, I personally only sort of browsed the code, and it's a bit hard to infer what it actually does. Maybe I was 5 minutes late to the meeting, so maybe you already had a demo of what it actually does.
Oh yeah, yeah. I guess at a high level, it just integrates with like when you set up a new project, it sets up GitHub webhooks and all that stuff, and stores builds in MongoDB, and the build run is through dotCI.yml. I think at a high level, that's what it does.
Okay. Yes, I didn't miss anything then. Thanks.
No.
yeah, if you're interested in, we can do. Perhaps that's. Perhaps we could record something like that. I think it'd be useful if you're willing to show us.
Yeah, I'd like to see a demo too, if it's possible.
Yeah, a bit more like a user-oriented.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Let me see. I can do that now. I think we have like 10 minutes, right?
All right.
I don't know if that's useful.
Yeah. No, I think it's useful. Let's do it.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen? My Jenkins?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I have the plugin installed, and basically it adds a new button here. So I think that's what we were talking about, that you cannot use the new item flow. You have to like click a new button here.
Yeah.
So it authorizes with GitHub. It shows you the org, and for the job you want to create, you can you can click on the button. This button is actually for sometimes because like unlike Travis, this is supposed to be used by teams at a company, at a organization. Sometimes people who like set up the project, it's based on their authorization, and they like leave, or like so you can click on this button to like change the authorization to yours.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you thought about using a table for that?
Like the layout?
Yeah.
No. I haven't. What, like a jelly table?
No, what was this? I forgot the internal name of this, but it's basically like I think you can use the layout of list view. You have so you have all the projects in the GitHub as rows, and I guess looks like you have two columns. Actually, it's three: name and the project, create the job, and create job with your roles token.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. It's just a minor. It's just a random comment. Sorry, I should shut up now.
No, that makes sense. I made a note of it. Yeah, that UI, I would like to improve that UI. It looks a little amateurish. But so yeah, this is basically the create project flow. I don't know if it builds on my machine, but so it has like the little UI, like it does the auto suggest with all the GitHub branches. Select master. That's the only branch I have here. So I can click build.
What's that tab on the build history widget that you had?
Oh yeah, that's also something interesting. I think one is just shows you all the master builds for all the master branch, and this tab is all the builds that you push to GitHub or you like started manually.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, we have a similar view, which is like our Jenkins. I can show it to you. So this is the. Can you guys see it? This
just so you know, this is recorded, so be careful what you want to show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think this is fine. Yeah, this is our internal Jenkins, and yeah, we have a since all the builds are recorded in MongoDB, we can query by the username. So one of the fields in build table is the pusher. So we can query all the builds of the user in like one query. And yeah, and the builds, the jobs are namespaced by the user. And these are all my jobs. So I guess one more thing of note is the color here, it always defaults to the default branch in GitHub. So if your default branch is like master, this would be the status of the master, not like a random build.
Oh, that's a nice touch.
Yeah, yeah. Like people here use some plugin like for wall display, and they want to look at the status of master, not like a random build. So yeah, I think it's not configured properly on my machine, but it basically reads your ci.yml and runs the build. It also sets up an environment. I don't know if I mentioned it. Like internally we use, so you can choose like a language and language version, and internally we use our internal like package management solution to like set up the Node.js version 8.5 or whatever, or you can choose Java, and the language version you want. One of the main things I also wanted to mention was it was really hard to parallelize your job. Like you can use Matrix, like Matrix project, but it was slightly harder to do. Like it was hard to figure out how to parallelize it.
Ah, parallelize as in. Wait,
like if you want to run Maven install and whatever Maven, like two things in parallel, like on two different nodes, like Maven integration tests.
So that was difficult in the sense that you had to work around something in the core?
I think if you started with a freestyle project, you had to like delete the project and create a matrix project. Is that right? Or can you like parallelize?
Oh, I see. Yeah, yes. No, I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah. So switching between job types, not easy.
Right. So in this case, if it's you started with Maven install and like your grows, and you want to like add integration tab, simply say simply turn the list into a map. Like this is Maven install, and you can like simply turn it into that would run this build on 2 different nodes, like Maven integration. I don't know if that does that make sense.
Yes, it does. I mean, I've seen it in action. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think that like people use that a lot here. Just,
So I noticed that in the chat window, the Christian asks if he can use that with the LDAP. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, what? Oh, with other. I haven't personally tried it, but as far as I know, it's like very tightly integrated with GitHub. I think it might be possible to abstract it out, but it might be like a little bit more work. Unless we're talking about just authentication, in which case it might be easier. But ultimately, it has to have an like interaction with GitHub. Like even the initial reading of .ci.yml, it does it through the API. Like it reads the file from the API. And
so it sounds like the idea here is that you'd log into Jenkins through LDAP or whatever else, and then like you maintain the association to GitHub through something else.
Yeah, that's how. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, that seems conceivable.
Yeah, it can be like abstracted out to like support GitLab or something else, but I think that would be a little bit of work.
Right. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? All right. Looks like we are. I think it's also on time, so I think we are done here. Okay. So yeah. So thank you very much for showing this. I think.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think this is excellent work. So looking forward to some PCs split out, and we get to. I think we can reuse stuff between existing Jenkins stuff and this, and I think that would make this even more useful.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I have all the notes from the meeting.
Cool. And in case you didn't see, we created this in the Google Docs as well. So.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'll post this one more time, but okay. That's awesome. It.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for Jenkins. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.